Although it may seem generic on paper, the world of ReZero is anything but, and as someone who lives and breathes story writing, it's always fun to see how our favorite shows stack up to the ultimate tier list. So today I'll be ranking what was originally supposed to be 10 but is now 11 due to a certain someone in S tier that I just had to include, ReZero characters based on just how well they're written in the story. So say it with me now, welcome back to the ultimate tier list. Okay, I'm going to be completely honest, I didn't know if this was a hot take or not, but seeing how many of y'all mentioned ROM on a post I made about Rem, I'd like to preface this section with this. While I respect your opinion, I'm not sorry. I personally was okay with ROM in the first season, but after that, I feel like things went downhill for her character at a breakneck speed. Specifically her confession, which I will get to in just a moment, but let's start at everything else. She is, as far as I'm concerned, just a shiny version of Rem with bad IVs. All things considered, she is just not a standout character, which is perfectly okay. Not every character needs to be written perfectly, but I feel like she definitely siphons her goodwill from Rem's writing, which in lies her issue. Once Rem becomes the heavy hitter in the story, we are really given no reason to care about ROM besides her just being a resident of Roswell's estate. She's not particularly strong, she's not unique, she's not necessarily an interesting character to follow. Overall, whenever she's disconnected from Rem, her character can't stand on its own 2 feet. But so what? She's an okay character. That's not necessarily a crime, is it? No, it's not a crime at all, but after her confession to Roswell, her character went down the drain for me. I knew they were trying to do this before they even did it. I felt it happening, and instead of cheering for ROM, I was actively protesting against it. Narratively, this is a blunder because it tries to use an intensely emotional moment to sell something that is ultimately not set up properly and completely meaningless to the viewer. Her actions in season 2 are fun to watch, but once you realize it's all for the sake of a completely irredeemable villain that ROM of all people should have every reason to hold a grudge against, it sends the ROM stocks into the negative. It's a love that wasn't given a reason to blossom, and so when it became evident to me that that's where it was going, and even after it happened, I stopped feeling as emotionally invested in ROM. It also hurts her case when you realize that Garfield was actively trying to save her from Roswell, but ROM feels more for the man that would kill her on a whim than Garfield. Not saying that they had to be a thing, I'm just saying that it doesn't help her case. Alright, don't get me wrong here, I do love Felt as a character and I also love the role she occupies in the story. Felt, however, does just get thrusted a bit too awkwardly in the story for me. It's just a bit jarring since she doesn't have a clear place in the narrative right now as a royal selection candidate. It puts her vaguely at odds with Amelia and Subaru, but also not really, but also she doesn't really even care. It's just that her place in the story right now is a bit ambiguous. Which I will properly admit this time is not a crime. Her character isn't outstanding by any means, but she's not really a main character, so it's excusable. She's pretty well developed and makes for a lovable character. And at least for right now, that's all there really needs to be to Felt. Roswell gets scored way above ROM because although I believe him to also have a slightly odd place in the story and some vague moral lines as a character, I do think his motivations ultimately make sense. And even just beyond making sense, they make for a really compelling antagonist. Hands down, one of my favorite things about Roswell is that thing his dub voice actor does when he does that sound like a spooky ghost.
You come to the mansion of Margrave Mathers in the kingdom of Lagunica.
That shit literally makes me piss my pants every time I hear it. But narratively, however, what I love about Roswell is that he acts as the perfect challenge villain to Subaru in season 2. Although his character isn't exactly groundbreaking, his sheer obsession and willingness to cross any line for the sake of his ideals pushes Subaru in a way that I truly did not expect. The outcome of Roswell's character, although a bit simplistic, was a net positive on the story, and more or less pretty cohesive. I will add as a little tidbit here though, the obsession angle is really something you have to be careful with. Genuine obsession doesn't just happen to anybody, you have to previously establish that this character would be inclined to be obsessed. Otherwise the motivation can come off as flimsy at times. In Roswell's case, he does clear the boundary, his obsession is believable, but it is important to note. Anyways, enough of my non-existent degree in storytelling. I would like to take this time to address the Julius haters. You're wrong. And that's okay. I'm just glad that you realize that your opinion is wrong, and we can move on from all this. Alright, all jokes aside, Julius's character arc, while not being nearly as deep as Roswell's, in my opinion is still equally if not more interesting. The knightly honor of this man is truly second only to Reinhardt, which makes Julius not only an extremely easy character to root for, but also gives him an extremely interesting thing to grapple with in his story. Him being torn between following his heart or his knightly honor is truly small potatoes compared to the others, but he somehow makes it feel just a little bit deeper. And I don't think I've seen a season finale that had a twist that made me make a face in real time. Because holy shit, he got done dirty. You know a writer is doing a good job when they leave you pissed, not because of a bad narrative decision, but because the decision was so good and natural and heartbreaking that you feel more mad at the villains. Don't get me wrong, he's not an earth-shattering character, but he is personally one of my favorites just because of how low-key chill he is. Also, 10 out of 10 character design. I will say that in general, it's hard to get story mileage out of your universe's strongest character just because, well, most growth doesn't come from just having strength, it's a byproduct of recognizing and overcoming weakness. You could make the argument that Reinhardt's weakness comes from his family situation or similar to Julius, his knightly honor, but at the end of the day, neither of those truly stop him from just being Reinhardt. What I am giving him credit for though is his narrative weight. While it's true that he may not have much in terms of growth or backstory quite yet, what he does have is a profound effect on the story whenever he shows up. As Betty describes it, he is the very definition of the word different. Adding a strongest character can either be a really good thing or a really bad thing in a story, and ReZero does this just right with Reinhardt. He's not so overpowered that all the problems are solved just by him showing up, but when he does show up, you still get this sense of relief. By far the best example of this is Subaru, Amelia, and Reinhardt versus Regulus. Reinhardt doesn't just outright win them the battle. The deciding factor is still these two characters, but he acts as a way to level the playing field, which is a really unique application of your strongest character in a fight. So in that way, while he may not be that deep of a character, he is still very well written into the world. To flip Reinhardt around, Betelgeuse is not the strongest. In fact, I don't know if you guys knew this, but he's dead. But that doesn't mean he wasn't a well-crafted character. Betelgeuse is the perfect example of how to turn an irredeemable character around. I'm obviously not going to say that Betelgeuse is fully redeemed, but when we're given the opportunity to explore that past, it turns into an amazing story. I've never actually quite seen the insanity angle used in anime as I've seen it used in Betelgeuse. Either way, his flashback story with Fortuna and Amelia is the definition of a touching scene, and the aftermath is the definition of heartbreak. He ends up playing a mere obstacle for Subaru to overcome in the main timeline, but the ultimate role he comes to play in Amelia's story for shaping her view on love is enough to make a grown man cry. And that's okay. Now, I'm a little biased on Otto simply because of how much I like the character archetype of the best friend. He is by no means the strongest. In fact, among the main cast, there is an argument to be made that he is the weakest, but despite that, when Otto shows up on screen, it almost always gives the same effect as Reinhardt. As the viewer, we are given this intense faith in Otto that he's going to do the right thing, and not only that, but he'll come out on top. Say what you will about him, but he is crafty as hell and uses his weakness as a character as strength in the overall story. We also get a lovely insight on him as a character, and it's an amazing backstory to an amazing character. Also, a really cool aspect to him is that he almost acts like a counterbalance to Roswell for Subaru and pushes him to be greater. I didn't think I would end up liking Otto as much as I did in the story, but he is truly a GOAT of ReZero. Rem is an amazing character just on every front. She has had one of the most biblical 180s I've ever seen in anime. She went from just straight murder with no question to the literal definition of loyalty. I'm sure that if you googled the definition of loyalty, a picture of Rem would show up somewhere. This girl single-handedly gave the best pep talk in all of anime, hell, maybe all of fiction. Now, I know what you're thinking. Yes, Subaru should have gotten folded back savage in just about every way possible at this point in the story, but what can you do? But I'm sure you were also thinking... Actually, I don't know what you're thinking, I just had to get that off my chest. The sheer amount of determination displayed whenever this character is on screen is downright divine, and the dynamic between these two with Subaru being Rem's hero is just so adorable. I do want to back up a little bit though, because I personally think that writing this kind of devotion onto a character can be a slippery slope, because it is a fair criticism to say that Rem is a little too gung-ho for Subaru. I don't personally believe it is, but I don't discredit that criticism because it's really a matter of opinion. But all in all, Rem was an amazingly executed character, and ReZero wouldn't be ReZero without Rem. So the reason why Amelia is an F tier is because she's simply not Rem. Oh, my bad, I forgot to put this over here. Okay, Amelia is a little bit of a letdown for season 1 and a good chunk of season 2, but I've 180'd on her since. It's mainly the way these two characters are written that sets the tone of the whole story, so naturally the way they interact is paramount. I personally wasn't as sold on the relationship between these two characters as I felt I should have been by the end of season 1, which is typically why I side with Rem on the debate. That being said, after a certain point, these two characters develop an extremely wholesome relationship. It's really weird to me because all the reasons I didn't like Amelia are the reasons why I really like her character now. I still think Season 1 Amelia can be pretty unbearable at times, but it takes that character trait and actively has her outgrow it in Season 2. Truthfully, it is masterful writing, and although it is a very dangerous game, it ultimately succeeds in its mission because I can't criticize Season 1 Amelia without also criticizing everything after, because Season 1 was the building blocks for what came after. It is also extremely satisfying to see Subaru's influence on Amelia help her to blossom as a character. I've seen way too many times when a male character is just generally inspiring to a female character and then boom, she wins because of the power of love. I wouldn't even really classify this as a cop-out, it's more just lazy writing. In the context of character arcs, if your character is inspired by another, they shouldn't grow for them, they should grow because of them. Amelia is winning because she's getting better at being Amelia instead of being better at loving Subaru. Although Subaru is putting in significant legwork to get her there, once she starts standing on her own as a character, she becomes very unique and determined and is not just a whiner. Amelia was written in an amazing way, and I truthfully have more hope in the future for this character than most others in ReZero. Alright, time to put this back on. Amelia is an F-tier piece of shit. Okay, this is the character that I made the exception for. This list was originally 10 characters, I made it 11 because I needed to talk about him. I don't know if it's just me, it might just be me, but oh my god, Garfield is an amazing character. Like, I did not anticipate liking his character as much as I did, but Season 3 absolutely changed my view on him. Even back in Season 2, the way Garfield conducts himself is above all extremely honest to who he is as a character and what he wants to protect. What's great about a character like him is that because of how transparent he is, we get to see all aspects of his struggle, his pain, and ultimately his triumph in every element of his growth as a character. It's really hard for me to pinpoint just one amazing spot because from start to finish, Garfield has a genuinely good character arc. It takes his bland aggression and transforms it into something that feels extremely human without it feeling too forced. Might be the only one here, but Garfield deserves some narrative praise. I'm not taking it off this time, the bias stays on. Beatrice is one of, if not my favorite character in the show, purely for the reason that I feel like she embodies this One Punch Man meme. Beatrice also has an extremely unique space in the story in the way of her history. These two characters have really similar backstories, but while Roswell is pretty good, Beatrice is amazing. The tragedy of this one character, and even more so her choosing to free herself by choosing Subaru after 500 years of being alone, is heartwarming. When it comes to comedic relief, I feel like she does an even better job of it than Subaru at times. In terms of competent characters, there are truly only a few characters that could beat a full-strength Betty. And she also has an extremely unique design that makes her stand out even among the characters in this world. No matter when Beatrice is on the screen, it always feels like something interesting and worth keeping the viewer's attention is happening. So to me, Beatrice is an S-tier character, and I'm just going to say this. Subaru x Beatrice is literally a crime, like I don't want to hear it. If your first thought to me saying Subaru x Beatrice is to argue, then you are precisely who I'm fucking talking to. I know some of y'all secretly ship these characters. I just can't prove it yet. In my opinion, there is a golden rule to writing great works of fantasy. Don't use humans to tell a story about magic, use magic to tell a story about humans. Allow me to explain. Take a show like Solo Leveling. I promise I do like this show, it's just really hard to not harp on sometimes. This is a great anime, don't get me wrong. It's thoroughly enjoyable, but ultimately what it lacks is a personal connection to the characters. It uses its character as a means to show off the world to you. As much as you marvel at the display, it's hard to feel truly connected. What you should instead do is use magic to help go in depth on the characters. ReZero is an amazing example of this principle, and that's why it's separate from your standard isekai. Even disregarding the larger world around Subaru, if we just take a look at his return by death ability, it immediately begins to explore a uniquely human concept: the fear of death. We don't just feel for Subaru's death, we feel with Subaru's death. We feel the tragic weight of losing all the progress he made with the people around him, as well as the knowledge of impending doom that he has to face every single waking moment of his life. Subaru is written in a way that makes it feel like the writer's not writing Subaru's character, but instead, Subaru's use of return by death is writing his character. Eventually I'll make a video going in depth on the true theme of ReZero, so subscribe for that, but in my opinion, the writing of Subaru's character is second to none. And that is the ultimate tier list. As always, I would like to thank these lovely friends, and if you would like to be featured in the next one, just leave a comment on what you thought of the video. I would also really appreciate it if you subscribed, as I'm trying to surpass 10k subs. I definitely want to start setting my bar a little bit higher because of the amount of AI slop anime shorts that I see out there with like 100k subs. It's starting to grate on my soul. But as always, I'll leave a video in the outro if you want to keep playing. But it looks like there's nothing left to be said. So with that, I bid you peace, my friend.